Becoming a CRNA. All right, these are 5 things that I think are the most challenging about nurse anesthesia training. Qualifications to speak on this are that I am a third year. I graduate in 150 days, and my last day of unpaid labor is in 129 days. Let's get into it. The first thing that I think is really challenging about nurse anesthesia training is all the responsibilities in the life that you have outside of the operating room. Whether those responsibilities include childcare, your partner, your family, or in some seasons of anesthesia training, writing an entire doctorate project or studying for boards or for the C or didactic, there is a whole world that is happening outside of the operating room. So you are clocked into the OR between 40 and 65 hours a week. And then on the outside, you often have 20 to 30 hours of studying outside of the operating room, and then life keeps happening on top of that. And our partners like to be involved in our lives, and if we have kids, they need attention as well. Life outside of the operating room is the hardest part of anesthesia training, in my opinion. The second thing that I think is really challenging as a third-year nurse anesthesia trainee is not being paid. Nurse anesthesia trainees in many parts of the country run rooms. We provide anesthesia. We are working, and I think that we should be paid. Nurse anesthesia trainees used to be paid. We have lost funding for that currently. I think that the next step forward is that instead of sign-on bonuses specifically to be paid out at the start of working, I think that nurse anesthesia trainees in the future will sign with anesthesia groups, and then they will offer to pay out from the time that they sign with that anesthesia group until they start. So there's an anesthesia group that I looked at in New Mexico that would do this. It was, I think it was like a $50,000 sign-on bonus, and then they would pay that out in however many months from the time that you would start working. So it ended up being like $3,000 a month. Anyway, nurse anesthesia trainees should be paid. Next thing that is really challenging about nurse anesthesia training is constantly starting over. Many of us rotate to many different clinical sites. And if you rotate to a new site, you don't know where anything is stored. You're using a new EMR, so things like Epic, Meditech, Cerner, paper charting, everything is slightly different when you go to a new facility, which is good because it makes you a stronger clinician, but it's also exhausting starting over new places where they do everything slightly differently and the culture is a little bit different everywhere you go. The next thing that's really challenging is constantly being on. So when you're a nurse anesthesia trainee, like an example of this is being in a cardiac room. The cardiac rooms, you're standing there with your 2 feet planted still, you're looking over the drapes, and you're doing anesthesia, and you're watching the whole time, and you never sit down. That's how my experience was anyway. You're so on in the OR. Other people are not as on. That's really exhausting. And you're on in the way that like you're providing the anesthetic, but you're also answering questions from people the whole time, and that's mentally draining in a way that is like hard to even describe, but it's exhausting. And the last thing is people management and personality management is one of the most challenging things about CRNA school. The people who are drawn to anesthesia, they have really strong opinions. And there's a saying in anesthesia that there are 99 different ways to give an anesthetic and 98 of them are safe. But every single person who you work with is going to be 100% convinced that their way is the only way to do it. So just navigating the big personalities out there is exhausting in and of itself. That being said, everybody does have something to teach, and I've learned a lot from people who I will not be practicing similarly to, but I will be gleaning little bits and pieces from every single person. So all of that to say, everyone who I've ever met loves anesthesia, and on the flip side of their training, once they're done, they say that it's a job that they would do it all over again for, and they love the work. But yeah, these are the things that I think are challenging about being a third-year nurse anesthesia trainee. Can't wait to be on the other side.